What is up everyone and welcome back to another video. So in this new OG Fortnite season, obviously ranked recently reset and a lot of people are back on the grind to Unreal. And whether it's your first time trying to get super high end rank or if you've been at it for a long time, all of us want to reach that super high rank, and in today's video I'm going to be showing you exactly how to do that. I'll be giving you guys everything you need to know to reach Unreal as fast as you possibly can in Fortnite OG. Before we get into it, be sure to drop a like on the video if it helps you out, subscribe to the channel if you're new and you want to see more tips and tricks content just like this in the future. And lastly guys, if you want to show some extra support, it's always super appreciated if you could use code Teckoh in the item shop. It's 100% free for you and it seriously does help me out a bunch. It only takes a couple seconds to type in and I'm telling you guys, it seriously does help me out a lot. As always, a huge thank you to everyone who uses it. But with that said, we've got a lot to cover, so let's get right into it. So getting into the first thing I want to talk about in today's video, and that's going to be the best game mode. This is one of the most common arguments and most common questions that people have about ranked mode. They wonder if playing solos, duos, or squads in particular is going to make them rank up more than the other ones. And it's understandable to wonder about that because Epic really does not do a good job of making it clear what actually makes you rank up. However, based on what I've seen from pro players, my friends, and even my own gameplay, I'm going to tell you guys that the best game mode to rank up is whatever game mode you have the best team for. So for example, if you have 4 really solid players, then squads is going to be the best mode by far. If you have 4 really good players and you're stomping through the lobby, you can easily drop 30 or even up to 40 kills. And obviously that's going to make you rank up a dramatic amount. If you have yourself and one really good teammate, then duos is going to be perfect. Obviously 2v2 fights are going to be much more manageable than 4v4. And lastly, if you tend to be a better player on your own or you don't have any great teammates to actually play with, then solos is going to be the move. So really the biggest thing here is that it's going to depend on your own situation. There's no one mode that's just going to be better for everybody. In terms of the actual ability to rank up, it's just about the same between all the modes. So the only real defining factor here is going to be the teammates. And just to let you guys know, if you do want to find some teammates to play with, and you can feel free to check out my Discord server, which is going to be linked down in the description. In the server, you can go and select your region, and then you can find a looking for group chat for your region. You can find a duo, you can find a squad, whether you're doing it for tournaments or ranked or whatever else. So once again, that's going to be linked down in the description if you want to check it out. But getting into our next section, and the next thing we want to talk about is the meta and the optimal strategy. Of course, the first thing you really need to focus on when it comes to ranking up fast is optimizing your playstyle to match the meta. Now the meta is going to change pretty rapidly throughout the OG Fortnite season since we're kind of switching between seasons, but the current meta is definitely a bit of an interesting one. At the time I'm making this video, keep in mind it's going to change, but currently healing items barely spawn, or at least they spawn at a very limited level. I'm telling you guys, you can loot like 3 or 4 houses and just not get any shield at all. It is kind of crazy, and hopefully they do fix it soon. Oftentimes, if you try to fight a lot of players and run an aggressive playstyle, you're going to end up getting killed simply because you run enough heals. And therefore, the biggest thing that I can recommend you guys do is to focus on getting good loot and heals before you start to fight a lot of players and start running that aggressive playstyle. If you can start off your game in a more passive way, secure a good amount of healing items, and then start pushing into fights, you're going to end up on great HP fighting mostly against people with little to no healing items. And I'm telling you guys, it makes things so much easier when you have 200 HP and extra heals and you're running into people who have less than 100 HP. That's one of the biggest ways you can give yourself an advantage in fights this season, so it's definitely something to keep in mind. So overall, definitely focus on getting plenty of healing items before you push into any fights. It's not going to be possible every single game, sometimes you're going to be contested, but overall it's a good thing to shoot for, and this should make a massive difference in allowing you to place higher consistently and ultimately get more kills in the current meta. If healing items begin to spawn more after I make this video, or if they happen to add siphon back or anything of that nature, then of course a more aggressive playstyle is going to be tolerable, so definitely keep an eye on that. With all that aggression talk in mind, I generally recommend landing at a POI that's either quiet in general or landing at a POI that's far away from the bus, taking that extra time in early game to get kitted up, and that way once you begin pushing in the later part of early game and into mid game, you're going to go in with a big health advantage most of the time and be much more consistent. One big key to keep in mind here is in the rank system, kills later in the game count for more regardless. You actually do gain more rank if you get kills in mid game or late game compared to early game. Off spawn kills really don't count for too much. Obviously they're still going to benefit you and you'll still gain percentage from getting early game kills, but they're not going to be the same as a mid game or late game kill. So the biggest key here is to focus your early game primarily on setting yourself up for a good mid and end game. Hopefully that all makes sense. Another aspect of playing to the meta here is the items you carry. Although it's frustrating to fight against, there's really no denying that the explosives currently in the game are OP. You've got the RPG, the grenade launcher, regular grenades, stink bombs, and they're most likely going to end up adding clingers and potentially others as well. Especially in team modes and especially in squads, if you have multiple players carry explosives at the same time, even though people are going to say it's a cringe way to play, and it kind of is, it is a super effective way to get kills. I'm telling you guys, half the time I die in ranked, it's pretty much because I get spammed by a grenade launcher. But really, it's hard for for me to actually get mad about that because frankly, it's just a smart way to play. We can argue all day about how it's really stupid to have a bunch of OP grenades and stuff like that in the game, but the fact of the matter is they're there, so you might as well take advantage of them. But that's it for my rant about explosives. Another aspect of that is going to be utility items and particularly mobility. I found that Rift-to-Goes have a pretty good spawn rate nowadays, and if you're able to hold on to some, then they're absolutely amazing for mid-game rotation, especially if you've got a pretty good setup and you want to play for endgame and get the win. You can use it to rotate to dead side super easily and play a really smart game. And grapplers are also amazing for endgame. I would say Rift-to-Goes are also a good option for endgame, but I'm going to recommend them slightly less than grapplers because they are only one use and they're a really good way to kind of get height real quick or something like that, especially if you can coordinate a push with your team. But the most consistent option is going to be grapplers for that. Overall though, you're definitely going to want to take advantage of mobility if possible, and whether you use it to push for more kills or play a safer strategy is totally your call. It's going to really depend on what they do with the healing spawn rate, what they do with Siphon, and how the overall game looks throughout the season. The next tip I have for you guys is one that's really important and one that a lot of people overlook, and that's VOD reviewing your games. Especially if you find yourself struggling to rank up or kind of stalling out in a certain division, this is going to be the key to getting you out of that. So one of the most important ways to make sure you rank up consistently is to VOD review, or in other words, watch back your games in replay mode to see what you do right and wrong and see what causes you to die in your games. By finding your biggest mistakes and then correcting them, you're going to find yourself playing much more consistent and dying to silly things less often. If you can actually see what's getting you killed, it's so much easier to counter it. Keeping an eye on what actually happens in your games is one of the most overlooked aspects of overall improvement and ranking up, since most of the time people keep playing ranked game after game and making the same mistakes and not realizing it. So if you find yourself just dying over and over again, take some time to review your games. I'm telling you guys, you're going to see a lot of stuff and it's going to make a big difference. Figure out what happened, figure out how to improve that for next time, and you're going to see a dramatic improvement. Getting into our next little kind of section here, and what I want to talk about next is fighting practice. Now, of course, simply playing ranked on its own is going to give you some really good fighting practice and some very realistic fighting practice, but you can also use creative as a supplement to that and really get some good practice in that way. You'll get a lot of touches in really quickly, you're going to get into a lot of fights, and it'll help you to improve your mechanics, your aim, and even just your overall fighting sense. So real quick, I want to cover 3 different maps that I recommend for this. The first one is going to be the Ken Bean Speed Realistic 1v1 map. This map is pretty much a simulation of you pushing an opponent on their box. It's going to be a one-on-one fight, and it's mostly based in close range. It does turn into a build fight sometimes, but it's basically meant to simulate one person pushing another person's box in game. It's a really good concept and a map I've been recommending for a while now, so I'll go ahead and put the code up on screen to that right now. Getting into our next fighting practice map, and this one is going to be Raider 464's Realistic Box Fights. What this is kind of a similar concept in the sense that it's mostly based around close range and box fighting. But what this map does is it basically puts you in one big box with your opponent, and you're meant to stay in close range and box fight. Since most fights this season revolve around box fighting, this is a really good way to practice. It's not the most realistic in the sense that it doesn't turn into a build fight or anything like that like a lot of fights do, but it keeps you in that close range in that box fighting environment, which is where probably 80 to 90% of your fights are going to end anyway. So kind of targeting that area and playing a mixture of a short to mid range kind of fight like you do here, it's going to be really good for your ranked fighting, and it should help you out a lot. So I'll go ahead and put the code up on screen to Raider 464's Realistic Box Fights. And finally guys, getting into our third and last fighting practice map, and this one is going to be Finest Realistic 1v1. This is just going to be your classic realistic 1v1. It's meant to simulate a mid-game fight, so it's going to be realistic loot, you against a real opponent, and you're going to be fighting however you would in a regular game. Essentially, this is just the type of fights you're going to run into in rank, except it's going to be in a controlled, creative environment, so you're going to be able to get more touches because you're fighting non-stop, and overall, it's going to be really good practice. I'll go ahead and put up the code on screen to it right now. Overall, all 3 of these maps are really good, and I definitely recommend you use them all in conjunction with one another, and I recommend you use all 3 of them in conjunction with one another to practice your fighting. It should help you improve a whole lot, and the fighting is going to be very applicable to your actual ranked games and help you to reach Unreal faster. So definitely spend some time in these fighting practice maps, you won't regret it. And finally guys, the last little topic I want to talk about in this video is going to be a very simple one, which is time and consistency. The last thing to know when it comes to reaching Unreal rank in Fortnite is the simple fact that it's going to take a lot of time and you're going to have to be consistent. Even if you drop 20 bombs every single game, you're not going to be able to hit Unreal in one day. It's simply a long process. Odds are, if you play a normal amount, such as a few hours a day, a couple times a week, it's almost certainly going to take you at least a handful of weeks to reach Unreal, even if you play pretty good. Especially once you climb up into Elite and Champions, ranking up gets excruciatingly slow. So my biggest tip here is simply to stay consistent with it and be patient. You know, it's going to go up and down, and it's really not going to be a constant uphill, but as long as you stick to it, continue improving, continue working on your mistakes, you're going to see progress. So focus on trying to have the most consistent, reliable performance you can, and although you may go up and down down in the natural course of events, and make sure every few days that you're at least mostly on an upward trend in terms of your rank. And by doing that, you should slowly but surely climb your way up to Unreal. It's a long process, but I believe in you guys. But with all that said, guys, that's going to wrap it up for today's video on how to reach Unreal in Fortnite OG. Overall, we covered a lot in this video, and hopefully it helped you guys out. If you found this video helpful, then be sure to drop a like on it, subscribe to the channel if you're new and you want to see more content just like this in the future. And as always, guys, it really means a lot if you could use code Teckoh in the item shop. It's 100% free for you. It only takes a couple seconds to type in, and it seriously does help me out a bunch. As always, a big thank you to everyone who uses it. With all that said, guys, thank you all for watching this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye for now.